I was 24 years old and my W-2 said $174,000, right? To some people, that's not a lot of money. To some people, that's a ton of money. To me, at that time, I
Yeah,
mean, that was a ton of
a
money,
ton.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
and that went just straight to my head.
Graham Nelson, welcome to the David Nurse Show and the special edition sessions. Graham, we're just going to dive on into it. We've known each other for a long time, and I'm
Yep.
blessed to call you a very good friend, great friend. But you had a moment in your life when you were at rock bottom, deepest,
Yeah.
darkest moment in your life. Can you talk us through what was going on, how you felt, how you got there, and then we'll work it out for the audience of how you overcame that and are living an amazing, thriving life today.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I appreciate you having me on. I think these are really cool for people to hear and the guests that you have on to kind of show their vulnerability and that sort of thing. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And so like my story is I tell people when I talk about this is um, everyone has their own basement, right? And what I mean by that is like some people's basements are really low, meaning they need to have something very drastic in their life has to happen to them for them to make a change, right? They get arrested, cause an accident, um,
Mm,
a partner leaves them, something like that, something that's like super
sure.
life changing.
Yep.
Whereas other people are able to recognize it a little bit earlier than something kind of horrific happening and able to make a change. Luckily for me, my basement wasn't something horrific happening, right? You could see something horrific coming or something bad
Mhm.
coming, but I was able to make a change before that. Now, as I've dissected this over the past few years, um, I've found that the reason I kind of got to this very low point with depression and anxiety, which led to me, drinking alcohol too much and that becoming a problem, was really is like I was living a life with just zero purpose. Like I
Mm,
had no purpose to it. I was really just kind of floating along. Um, I was an athlete in college, and when that was done, I really had no direction. I had no focus. I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. So I just followed the path of what I thought was the right path to do. Went out, got a job, um, and became relatively successful at that job pretty early
yep.
on. And
Yep.
what I mean by successful at that point in my career was financially successful, right? I mean, and David, you heard me tell this story a little bit before, but I was 24 years old and my W-2 said $174,000, right? To some people, that's not a lot of money. To some people, that's a ton of money. To me, at that time, I
Yeah.
mean, that was a ton of
A
money,
ton.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
that is like life, especially when you're 24 and like life changing, do whatever. And that went just straight to my head, not necessarily from like an ego standpoint, but all I wanted more because I wanted to show everyone that I was
Mm,
successful. And I put that in air
sure.
quotes. I
Yep.
wanted the world to see that, hey, I can drive a nice car. I have a cool car.
So, as a mindset coach to top NBA performers, CEOs, Hollywood actors, and just high performers of all level, the main thing that these top performers have to be is locked in mentally and locked in physically. Now, I've dealt with a lot of optimization products that have done one or the other, but I've never had something that does both of these: mental acuity and physical domination, and that is GoExec. GoExec is built differently. So are you, so am I. Scientifically backed, GoExec has carefully formulated a product that supports ATP production, mitochondrial biogenesis, improves blood flow, and protects your cells from oxidative stress, leading to cellular aging. The results in increased mental clarity, sustained energy, and delayed cellular aging. GoExec has become my go-to, and here's why. Let me tell you about this thing called BioPQQ. Nobody is using this. This is a booster of energy, endurance, longevity. BioPQQ has scientifically been shown to slow the aging process. Isn't that what we're all trying to do, is stay young, slower the aging process? Increase energy levels. Yeah, I'll take that. And improve cognition function. Why wouldn't you want to have higher cognitive firing brain synapses? It won the Ingrinda Editor's Choice Awards for ingredient with the best science. The ingredient with the best science. Yeah, it works. Mind and body. GoExec. Go get it. I use it when I step on stage to speak, when I get behind the mic and I podcast. GoExec is my go-to.
Condo. Um, I'm a member at X Country Club. Like that's what I wanted because I thought that's what other people wanted, and I thought that's what other people wanted to see from me. And it was so naive and so young, and all that did is ultimately it led to me really being only focusing on that. And what I started to see is I just started making less and less and less and less money, right? Um, and again, like money's all relative. It's not. I'm not here to talk about money, but like I was less quote unquote successful over time because I was doing it for the wrong things. And this led me to truly like bottoming out. At this point, I really didn't like my job. I didn't like who the person I'd become. I was drinking way, way, way too much to the point that I started affecting my family. Um, and what happened is my wife and I essentially had a conversation. She's like, "Hey man, you've got to get this fixed. You've got to get this under wraps. You have to, it's impacting our family." At that time, we had a 1 year old boy, and so I decided to make a change. I went and got some help. We figured it out, and I realized like, hey, there is a purpose here. No one cares about how much money I make. No one cares about the car I drive. No one cares about any of that stuff. And I started living a life with a mission of supporting my family, with a mission of being a great dad, with being a great husband. And that's what I was living for every day. And I didn't have to identify myself with my job, right? My
Yeah.
job wasn't who I
Yeah.
was. And for a period of time, that's what it was. And so that's kind of a long winded way of explaining like what got
Yeah.
me there was worrying about what other people thought. It was worrying about the ego of it all. Um, and it drove me into this deep state of really depression and high anxiety that I tried to fix with, you know, alcohol, quite frankly. And thank God I've gotten out of it.
Well, fascinating, man, and amazing. Congratulations for you for getting out of it and having that awareness and taking the right steps towards it. But let's unpack it a little bit. As
Yep.
humans, we seek validation. It's just something we seek. We seek validation. We seek identity. That's why people have identified with different tribes throughout the years. And it's just something that in our human innate nature that we want. Why do you think it was that you were seeking your validation in worldly things? That did you think that it was going to bring you fulfillment? Did you think of this, okay, look at Graham making money, being a part of this club? Did you think that was going to bring you joy? Is that what I guess the inclination was?
I think at the time it was a like if this happens, I will be happy. If I make X amount of
Ah,
dollars, I will be happy. If I get this title, I will be happy. Right. In like obviously we all know that's as you grow older and wiser and experience you understand that that's not the case at all, but I think if I could go back and look at it, that is probably where my mindset was.
yeah, yeah. It's Yeah, you're right. We all say we know that, but it's still something that tugs at us, that we want to feel that. And like we've talked about, it's everything is a relationship with. It's a relationship with your success. It's a relationship with what you're doing with your time, a relationship with your identity. There's no like I'm going to be happy when I make it here. And did it take you to that point of that conversation? Was that the snapshot moment with your wife? Was that the trigger that was like, okay, I'm not living the right way. Now I need to make a change of where do I find my validation? Do I find it in myself and the world telling me how great I am? Or do I find it in my kids and my family and serving for a bigger purpose? I looked up some stats on this. Check this out. This is incredible. 31% of adults worldwide have more confidence based on clear skin. 31, that's almost 1/3 of people like, hey, you got clear skin, you're more confident. Get this, better looking people, meaning of just the term the clear skin as we're putting that with, earn 12% more financially over their lifetime. 12% more? That literally could be millions of dollars. You are investing a lot into the lab, into the science, into the
Yeah.
research. It is so far a no-brainer why anybody would use anything else other than OneSkin. Like, is there anything like you can even think of that makes sense? Like, I'm trying to and I can't. I want to say, out of the kindness of your guys' heart, you are providing for our listeners a special pricing code, which will be in the show notes. So look in the show notes to try out OneSkin for yourself.
Strongly recommend to subscribe to our newsletter. We want to empower everyone because we know that the choices that we are making today will definitely impact how are gonna age tomorrow.
Yeah, that was probably it. Like, I had known for a long time, you can feel yourself sliding backward. Like, you feel yourself digging a
Yeah.
hole, right? I mean, it's just the way it is. But when someone, not just someone, the person you care most about in the world says like, "Hey, look, you got to make a change." Like, either you're going to make a change or change is going to happen to you, one way or the other, right? And so
Right.
you can either decide to make that change, or that person in your life is going to do something that changes your life. So I made a
But how
decision, and like, go ahead.
But yeah, but how do you accept that? I feel like a lot of people, what their wife will say, "Hey, you got to change," or their significant other will say, "You got to make a change." But how do you actually accept that? Because there's a big part of it that is dying to your own self and dying to your own
Yep.
needs. How,
Yep.
can you recall or walk us through like what went through that process of, because it's hard even in an argument, it's hard to admit that we're wrong in the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. So I went and got some talked to an individual who had been through a similar situation, and he basically
Mm,
laid it out. He's like, "Man, what I want you to do is just go write down like all the transgressions you've made, all the lies you've told, to other people, to yourself,
mm.
all of those things, and essentially like look in the mirror and look at all the crappy stuff that you have done, right? And until you are able to, because it is very, very hard, but until you are able to do an exercise like that, where you can actually see it, where it's written out on paper, and get yourself to a very, very vulnerable point with yourself, right? Not with other people, with yourself. There, you have a 0% chance of accepting anything that you've done wrong. You'll become defensive. You'll hurt it. So you have to allow yourself to get to a point by bringing up specific examples of what's happened. And I did
I
that,
like that.
and it changed. It absolutely changed my life, man. Like, I was able to do it. And I know that's part of the thing, that's a part of a number of different programs, when like AA, or things like that. But it's an absolute tool to make sure you get yourself to a vulnerable place with yourself, because if you're not vulnerable with yourself, you'll never be vulnerable with anybody else, ever. Um, and so that's what I did, and that's kind of what grounded me to say, all right, we're going to build up from here. We're going to build up from ground zero, um, and go from there. And you learn to accept what has happened before. You don't, because at that point, I'm kind of talking myself into an answer here. So it's a really good question. At that point, you're not you're not climbing out of a hole, so to speak. You get
Yeah.
yourself out of that hole, and you're just starting from the ground. Whereas if you don't allow yourself to be like in a vulnerable state, and accept who you are, you're going to keep having to climb out of that hole. And climbing out of a hole is way harder than building from the ground up.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? And I think you hit on a really important point. Well, I know you did, of obviously the awareness and the acceptance, something we have to come to terms with, but you took action, detailed action towards it. You found
Hmm.
somebody who had been through it before. I think that's very, very key. We often think what we're going through, we're alone. No one else is feeling this way. No one's ever felt like that. That's the biggest lie. Somebody probably right next door to you is feeling the same way. Seek somebody who has been through it before. And then you wrote down every single one. You probably wrote pages and pages of that. But that's a way
Hmm.
of taking what is holding your mind back, holding yourself back, and releasing it. It's the action of release. And I'm sure that was that's a step, and probably a weight off your shoulder. But do you attribute like those two steps to being two of the most important things that helped you go from shifting your identity and purpose from self to others?
100%. I mean, those are the most important things, because it's like, that is, like I mentioned, that is the groundwork. That is
Yeah.
the base of what you build everything on. At least for me, right? That's the base that I built everything on. And I still do that to this day. Like, if there's times that I'm struggling or going through a difficult part, like I'll write down, like, hey man, like at work or wherever, I'll
Yep.
write down some things like, hey, where did I screw up? Where did I mess up? Can I own this? Can this be my fault in some way? If it is, cool. Like, all right, then we accept it and move on, or apologize or do whatever you need to do. But it's a tool that you can continue to use to make sure you are just grounding yourself in that place of like, here's the person that I am. Here's the transgressions that I made. Let's move forward from here.
Yeah, and how do you continue to move forward? So as you said, you got to the ground level. Now you're taking these daily steps, and obviously it's taken time, but I'm sure you've implemented some habits in your day or your weekly routines that is a reflection on, hey, how am I doing? Am I still on track for the person that I have committed to my family to be, or am I going back more towards the person that I was? Because there's ultimately two ends of the spectrum. On the left side, the far left side, this is complete egotistical. This is all about yourself. On the right side, it is your full alignment with who you were created to be, in service mode to others. And it's a constant battle. It's a societal pull that brings us to the left side, to the ego, but it's a daily battle that we have to take towards the right side. So, what have you implemented that have helped you stay closer to that right side?
Um, it's much easier when you help other people do it, right? You hear other people who are going through it,
Mm,
and you,
nice,
um,
nice.
right? Because it essentially makes you reevaluate if you're straying, if you're going to one side, going to the wrong side a little bit. If you go and learn from talk to someone else who's going through similar challenges, you're like, oh, yep, I was there. Let's pull ourselves back a little bit. Let's ground ourselves again. Um, and the other thing that I do is I am just fully focused on the now. Like, you hear people say,
Mm,
be where your feet are, be right here. Like, I just control what I can control right here, the decisions that I make right here in each individual day, on each individual hour. Um, sometimes it's great, other times it's not as good. But that's all I focus on. I don't worry about the future. That stuff's going to take care of itself as long as you're putting in the work now. Whereas before, I was always concerned about what's going to happen a year from now, 6 years from now, whatever it looked like. I'm just here on a day to day basis, man, just trying to do the right thing.
enjoying the journey, the
Yeah.
daily journey, the good, the bad, the indifferent. It's all a journey. So, what would you tell somebody right now listening to this podcast that's like, okay, whatever, sure, Graham, I hear you, but I want to reach this level on the corporate ladder. I want to reach this level of success. What would you tell that person to shift their mind so they don't have to go down the same path that you went down?
So maybe my favorite topic in the world. Um, and David, you've known me long enough that if someone asked me that question, I would like probably punch them in the face back verbally, right? Like with a number of questions. My first question would be why? Why do you want that, right?
Nice.
And if their answer is something along the lines that has like a vanity aspect to it, or they're gonna find joy, I would continue to push that. Why do you think you're gonna find joy in that? Like, what is
Mm,
it going to bring you? What value is that going to bring you to your family? And they might have like a very, very, very good answer to that, right? But
yeah.
the point is you better have a really good answer to that.
Yeah.
So if someone says, "Hey, I want to be the next CEO of X company," pick it, doesn't matter, and you tell them why, and their answer is along the lines of like, "I legitimately think that this can change the world because of A, B, C, D, E, and F, and I see it impacting all of these people for good," and you have a legitimate reason, like, go for it, right? Work your tail off and
Good.
absolutely go for it. But if someone starts
Good.
talking about money, fame, power, all of those
Yeah.
things, they're going to fail. They just will fail, and they'll be miserable along the way.
Man, that's good. That is, I love that your answer was ask them why, and not just one why, but the layers of why to
Yeah.
really get down to the point of the actual true meaning of it and how the lens has to point. It always has to point to a bigger purpose and a bigger reason than yourself. It just never I don't think I've ever been around anybody who has said, "Hey, I just want to be famous," and has been innately, truthfully, honestly joyful. It doesn't happen. Although it's a very shiny allure, but it never is the fulfillment.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, when people say find your why, I think it can go deeper than that, right? You talk about when someone says, "Hey, what's your why?" Like, well, my why to get out of bed and exercise in the morning is so like I can just be relatively healthy, right? But like, what's your, and you and I have talked about this all the time, but like, what's your mission, right?
Mm.
I can come up with a why for anything. All a why is to me is like just an explanation, but a mission is something like you can get absolutely behind and driven by, and that drives you every day. Whereas your
Nice.
why pulls you out of bed, your mission kind of drives you out of bed, if that makes sense.
Ooh, say that again. Your why pulls you out of bed. Your mission drives you out of bed. I've never heard that said. I actually really, really like that. If you're
I think
on
I just,
mission,
I
you
think I just,
rock it. You just made
yeah,
that up.
I just made it up. Yeah.
Oh, dropping the mic. You rock it out of bed if you're on a mission. But if you don't, if you just have to be yanked. You have to be pulled. You're continuing to hit that
Yeah.
snooze button.
Yep.
Ooh, that's good. Look at you. Look at you.
You,
Graham
you
Nelson,
let me
that's
talk
amazing.
for, yeah, you let me talk for 20 minutes. I say one smart thing in there. You give me enough at bats. I'm gonna get a hit here. All right.
From a baseball player saying it. No, Graham, I thought you've just brought tremendous value you have to anybody listening to this. Where is your mission? What are you filtering your decisions daily through? Is it going to be for others or is it going to be for yourself? And you are a living, walking example of how you can go one way, but change your direction, change your compass, and have a thriving family life in the correct way. So, Graham, man,
Hope so, man.
thank you for coming on. Amazing session with you, brother.
I appreciate it, dude.